It's 1993 and most wrestling shows are boring affairs filmed weeks in advance in empty studios. Then this guy had a crazy idea. Wait, what if we aired this stuff live? A television show like no other. Sweaty men pretending to fight in their underwear, broadcast directly into America's living rooms. This isn't what it used to look like though, because unlike today, Raw first started in the tiny Grand Ballroom at Manhattan Center where fans were so close they could smell Ultimate Warrior's body oil. The January 11th, 1993 debut episode of Raw featured Rob Bartlett on commentary, a Yokozuna squash match, and The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in action, setting the stage for the next 3 decades of Monday nights. But going live every week was expensive as hell, so WWF started taping multiple episodes in one night, forcing wrestlers to change clothes 4 times and pretend it was different weeks. They eventually abandoned New York entirely to tape in exotic locations like Bushkill in Pennsylvania. Raw chugged along as a 1-hour show until September 1995, when WCW launched Monday Nitro directly against it. Ted Turner had declared war, and the Monday Night Wars had officially begun. Soon Vince realized that he'd need something more exciting than Tatanka vs. Crush to compete with Hollywood Hogan. By 1997, WWF was getting absolutely destroyed in the ratings by WCW Nitro. In desperation, Raw expanded to 2 hours and rebranded as Raw is War, which unfortunately wasn't enough to stop fans from changing the channel to watch the NWO run wild on Nitro. Then a bald redneck named Stone Cold Steve Austin flipped everyone off, and wrestling changed forever. Austin's feud against Vince McMahon started turning the tide in WWE's favor. Austin drove a beer truck into the arena and made Vince's life a living hell. The Rock electrified the millions with his catchphrases. Raw became the centerpiece of the Attitude Era, featuring beer drinking, trash talking, middle finger waving chaos that teenagers secretly watched while their parents were asleep. The Undertaker hung people from symbols, Kane set people on fire, DX told everyone to suck it, Kurt Angle drank milk, Val Venis nearly got his dick chopped off, and Raw quickly became a weekly train wreck of insanity. Other iconic moments included the This Is Your Life segment with The Rock and Mankind. The higher power was revealed to be Vince McMahon. It's me, Austin! Oh, son of a bitch! While the Acolytes played poker and drank beer backstage every week. The tag team division was chaotic. Chris Jericho arrived in the company, the women's division made parents hide the remotes from the kids, and Mrs. Foley's baby boy became WWF champion. Speaking of which, January 4th, 1999 marked one of Raw's most pivotal moments when a WCW announcer sarcastically spoiled Mick Foley's pre-taped title win by saying, "Gonna put some butts in the seat." Over 600,000 viewers immediately switched to Raw to watch Foley's crowning moment, while Nitro aired the infamous Finger Poke of Doom, where Hulk Hogan won the title by poking Kevin Nash in the chest. This was essentially the night WCW dug its own grave. Following the WCW purchase, WWF had more wrestlers than they knew what to do with, so in March 2002 they split the company in half with a brand extension where Raw and SmackDown became separate shows with different rosters. Raw became Vince McMahon's personal playground, with his favorite muscleman getting most of the spotlight. Triple H, now both an on-screen character and the guy sleeping with the boss's daughter in real life, dominated the show with his 20-minute promos that started every episode. Tonight, I am the game! In late 2001, Raw is War was retitled to Raw after the 9/11 attacks, and WWF also changed its name to WWE after losing a lawsuit to some pandas. This era of Raw had its fair share of unpredictable moments, though. Eric Bischoff became the general manager of Raw. Goldberg finally arrived in WWE after being WCW's biggest star, immediately getting into a feud with The Rock. Kane took off his mask and electrocuted Shane McMahon's balls, and Raw got its taste of HLA. WWE also gave us the Katie Vick angle where Triple H pretended to do the deed with a mannequin in a casket while dressed as Kane, which somehow got approved by multiple people in suits. HBK nearly kicked Shelton's head all the way to Cleveland, DX reunited to take down the McMahons, and we also got the first ever women's main event when Lita faced Trish Stratus in December 2004. This era of Raw also saw a huge shift in the main event scene. John Cena got drafted to Raw in 2005, launching his decade of dominance. Edge and Lita pretended to do the deed on live TV in a segment that drew massive ratings and approximately 10 million angry letters from parents. Umaga demolished everyone in sight. Randy Orton started taking people out of retirement homes and putting them in hospitals, while Jeff Hardy jumped from crazy heights to inspire an entire generation of kids. In March 2005, Vince announced Raw would be returning to USA Network after 5 years on Spike TV. To counter-program, Spike immediately put UFC in Raw's old time slot, helping launch MMA into the mainstream. Meanwhile, Raw continued to dominate Monday nights despite increasingly questionable creative decisions. As 2008 approached, WWE faced pressure from sponsors about its violent and edgy content. Linda McMahon was also running for Senate during this time, which made the company extra motivated to clean up its image. In mid-2008, Raw officially shifted to a family-friendly PG rating that had parents relieved and older fans absolutely furious. John Cena became the definitive face of this period with his rainbow-colored Never Give Up merchandise. His character became essentially a walking billboard for hustle, loyalty, and respect, which was great for selling wristbands but terrible for a certain Mr. Kennedy. This era wasn't without its memorable moments, though. Shawn Michaels superkicked a 70-year-old Ric Flair into retirement, Randy Orton punted everyone's head off their shoulders, and Chris Jericho had an incredible heel run which saw him wear expensive suits and speak very, very slowly to annoy people. We got Hornswoggle being revealed as Vince McMahon's illegitimate son, Donald Trump shaved Vince McMahon bald, we had guest hosts who had clearly never watched wrestling before showing up, and a laptop became the general manager of Raw. Yes, you heard that right. A laptop.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
Mayweather punched the Big Show, Santino Marella became a meme, and Raw had one too many cringeworthy segments that made you question your life choices as a wrestling fan. But in the summer of 2011, everything changed when CM Punk grabbed a microphone and delivered his infamous pipe bomb promo. For 5 glorious minutes, Raw felt real again as Punk went on to hold the WWE Championship for 434 days. The Rock returned to feud with Cena for a once-in-a-lifetime match that happened twice. Brock Lesnar returned to F5. Everything that moved in Raw expanded to an exhausting 3 hours in 2012, giving us an extra 60 minutes of recaps, commercials, and segments where Brodus Clay danced with children. Raw hit its 1000th episode on July 23, 2012, celebrating with returning legends while simultaneously reminding older fans how much better the show used to be. Throughout this era, Raw continued drawing solid ratings despite the watered-down content. But as 2014 approached, fans were demanding something different. They refused to accept WWE's chosen heroes and instead started chanting for Daniel Bryan, a bearded indie darling who was never supposed to be the top guy. The reality era of Raw started in 2014, and Bryan's journey became this era's defining story as fans hijacked shows with WWE finally gave in. The Shield burst onto the scene and dominated this era before Seth Rollins betrayed his brothers by hitting them with chairs approximately 47 times. Rollins would go on to become the Authority's golden boy, while Roman Reigns began his push as the next top guy despite fans loudly booing him every time his music hit. Stars like Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn arrived on the main roster, while John Cena made the US title relevant for the first time in over a decade, as Raw and SmackDown split into separate rosters again. Braun Strowman was flipping ambulances, Brock Lesnar was tossing doors into crowds while hijacking the main event scene, and Goldberg returned once again to piss off the internet fans. We got DX feuding with The Undertaker and Kane in a match that nobody asked for, Bray Wyatt became The Fiend, and Becky Lynch gave us this iconic moment. Raw celebrated its 25th anniversary on January 22, 2018, with a simulcast from Barclays Center and the original Manhattan Center. The following month, Raw aired a record-breaking 2-hour gauntlet match that somehow made people sit through 120 minutes of wrestling without changing the channel. This era of Raw was mainly centered around Brock Lesnar, the duo of Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens, and over a dozen Shield reunions. Rusev got cucked on live TV, R-Truth would get chased by 20 people backstage every week, and all in all, this was a pretty bizarre time to be a wrestling fan. But in March 2020, things were about to get even more bizarre when the pandemic shut down the world. WWE was forced to improvise, and Raw started airing from the Thunderdome, a dystopian arena filled with virtual fans on LED boards who sometimes showed inappropriate images or fell asleep on camera. Wrestlers had to pretend to feed off virtual fan energy while Drew McIntyre carried the show on his muscular Scottish shoulders. Edge and Randy Orton thought we were back in 2007. Alexa Bliss got possessed by The Fiend, and for a brief period in 2020, WWE experimented with a bizarre Fight Club parody style of wrestling, labeled as Raw Underground. In July 2021, live crowds finally returned and everyone rejoiced until the Vince McMahon hush money news hit. This led to Triple H taking over creative control, with immediate improvements in the product. Matches were longer, previously released stars returned to the company, and Michael Cole was finally allowed to use terms like wrestler and belt on commentary. Triple H's Raw saw the return of stars like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk, mid-card titles getting better treatment, and 100 episodes of Raw that started with this. In 2024, WWE announced Raw would move to Netflix in 2025 for a reported $5 billion deal. Through 3 decades of change, Raw has remained the longest-running weekly episodic program in US television history. What began as a revolutionary experiment in a small New York theater became a global phenomenon that somehow convinced us to keep watching sweaty men and women pretend to fight for 30 plus years. Now that is impressive.